Hola everybody, it's been a while. If you've followed Viva Spanish for any length of time, you'll know that I've always been pretty consistent with lessons, content, videos, classes, and generally talking far too much about Spanish. But podcasts, they've taken a bit of a backseat recently. So I thought it was probably time to sit down, switch the mic back on, and give you guys a proper update on what's been happening with Viva Spanish. The business, the lessons, life in general, and maybe share a few things that I've learned along the way. Because honestly, a lot has happened. Some of it's been planned, some of it definitely has not been planned. And I think that's probably where we'll start. One thing that I have realized over the last year or two is that Viva Spanish, it really isn't the same business as it was when it started. When I first started teaching Spanish, I wasn't even interested in doing it. I was approached by a friend. Then I decided that I'd maybe see if I can fill a few lessons. No plan, no grand vision, no we're going to build an academy. I just loved Spanish and I loved helping people. And in the end, I decided I wanted to make a living doing things that I actually enjoyed. So fast forward to today, and we've got hundreds of hours of curriculum, classes running every week, students who have been with us for years, a waiting list at several points in the week, teachers delivering lessons under the Viva Spanish banner, and most recently, the expansion into Leeds. Now that really has been an interesting project because it showed me something that I wasn't sure of. A lot of what we're doing actually works. Not because I'm some sort of business genius, but because the fundamentals are sound. People don't want boring lessons. They don't want to spend 10 years learning grammar and still panic when somebody asks them a question when they're in Spain. They want confidence. They want conversation. They want to ultimately enjoy learning. And that's what Viva Spanish has always been built around. I asked myself the question, how would I want to learn Spanish if I were to have classes? And also, how do I want my classes to feel when I'm delivering them? Because I'm going to spend a lot of time doing it if things go well. So we launched with Andy in Leeds. We found venues, we put classes together, we ran ads, we built interest. And honestly, there was a moment where I thought, right, let's see if this works outside of Lincoln. Because when you've built something in one location, there's always that little voice in your head saying, maybe it only works here. Maybe because it's with people that know of you. Maybe you've just got lucky. But Leeds has proved something very important. This method travels. The culture travels. The philosophy travels. The students there wanted exactly the same thing as the students that I have here, which is fun lessons, real conversation, no pressure, no classroom trauma. And watching that happen was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done professionally. Not because it made me rich, because it didn't, but because it proved that Viva Spanish is bigger than just one teacher standing up in front of a handful of students here and there. One thing that nobody tells you when you start a business is that the business itself isn't actually the hardest part. The hardest part is managing yourself, the self-doubt, the uncertainty, the constant question of, am I doing the right thing? I think people imagine business owners waking up every day feeling confident. Most don't. Most of us are making educated guesses. We're just trying things out and we're seeing what works. We're adjusting, then we're trying again. And over the last couple of years, I've become less obsessed with perfection because ultimately it doesn't exist. And I've become much more obsessed with consistency because consistency wins. Not motivation, not inspiration, consistency. The classes that filled weren't always the most exciting idea. They were just the ones that kept showing up. The ads that worked weren't necessarily the cleverest, although I do like some of the ones. They were the ones that we tested out. The opportunities that appeared usually came after months of work that nobody ever saw. And I think that's true of almost everything. Business, fitness, languages, relationships. Most success looks incredibly boring when you zoom right in. One of the unexpected things about teaching Spanish is that you learn as much, if not more, the more you teach. I've taught thousands of lessons now, and you get a front row seat into people's lives. You watch people retire, change careers, move abroad, start their own businesses, get married, bottom out on their confidence, regain their confidence. And one thing that I've noticed is that people are capable of far more than they think. The person who says, "I'm terrible at languages," often becomes one of the best students. The person who apologizes every lesson for not remembering eventually starts having full conversations in Spanish. And the person who nearly quits, they often become the one who sticks around for the longest time. And honestly, that is one of my favorite parts of the job. Watching somebody realize they're more capable than they thought they were. Spanish just happens to be the vehicle in this case. But they take this away and they apply it to all sorts of things. Now, away from Viva Spanish, life's been busy too. And I think getting older changes your perspective a bit. You stop chasing every opportunity. You stop trying to win every race because you can't. You start asking different questions. Questions like, do I actually enjoy this? Does this fit the life that I want? Am I building something that I want to live inside? Because success without freedom isn't really success. And I think that's one thing that Viva Spanish has given me. A life designed more intentionally. Not perfectly, definitely not perfectly, but intentionally. The ability to work with people I like and not work with those I don't. To talk about something that I genuinely enjoy. To create things, teach, build, learn. And that is something that I am incredibly grateful for. So where does Viva Spanish go from here? Honestly, more of what works, I guess. Better lessons, better experiences, more opportunities for people to speak Spanish confidently, continued growth, but sensible growth. I don't want to become the biggest. I'm not interested in being the biggest. I'm interested in becoming the best possible version of what Viva Spanish is supposed to be. A place where people come to enjoy learning, a place where people make friends, a place where people gain confidence, and ultimately, a place where people realize they're capable of much, much more than they first believed when they stepped into the room. If you've been part of Viva Spanish in any way, shape or form, thank you. Whether you've been in a lesson, watched a video, liked a post, sent a message, recommended us to a friend, or simply listened to this podcast, thank you. Because none of this exists without you. And the funny thing is, this podcast was supposed to be about Spanish, but really it's about people. Spanish is just the thing that brings us together. The confidence, the friendships, the laughs, the stories, the growth, that's the real magic. And maybe, just maybe, that's why Viva Spanish has always felt like more than just learning Spanish. Anyway, it's good to be back. And thank you. Hasta la próxima. And as always, keep speaking Spanish, even when you think you're not ready, especially when you think you're not ready.